Wales, a stereotyping, he said, of the worst kind. Republican members of the committee, for their part, sought to discredit Anita Hill's testimony. The Republicans today are feeling much more confident about the Thomas nomination. Several of them have said, in a word, we think we now have it rolling. We think we're going to win it. They have discredited Anita Hill's testimony, as they see it, by suggesting that some of the details of her charges might have been drawn from sources other than her own memory. Joining me again here in New York is senior Washington correspondent Bob Schieffer, and also with us at the hearings in Washington, law correspondent Rita Braver. Rita, I gather that the Republicans, while not quite celebrating, and I shouldn't say just the Republicans and those Democrats who favor Thomas believe that the momentum has swung heavily his way and that they're now on the way to getting the nomination approved.
Well, I think there are two different issues here. One is that they definitely believe that the momentum has swung their way. They believe that Senator Hatch was very effective today in raising doubts about Anita Hill's credibility, and he's expected to even go a little further. Some people suggested that he may have some things to reveal today about why she left her very first job. Perhaps that, as she said, she had no problems on that job. He may try to raise the issue that maybe she did have some problems. Again, hammer away at that credibility. That is the strategy. There is also going to be testimony later from one of her corroborators, who is also going to be, as I understand it, sort of drawn out and suggested that she may be the one who put Anita Hill up to coming forward and maybe encouraging her to go further than Anita Hill's memory really should have let her go. Those are some of the things that people are expecting to come up. But whether that will turn into votes, some of the people that I have been talking to are not sure yet. They believe that the undecided senators are still going to wait and see what the political realities in their own hometowns, their own home states are before they make a decision. One other thing that's interesting, several people mentioned to me, and that is that there's another woman, Dan, as you know, who is supposed to come forward and testify about annoying behavior, she says, that Clarence Thomas exhibited toward her. Now, some people have told me today that she's beginning to get a little cold feet about coming before the committee because she feels that she may be attacked in the same way that Anita Hill was attacked. Also, I'm hearing from a lot of very furious women who believe that Hill is being portrayed very unfairly here and that, again, a disservice has been done to her. One senator, I said, how's it going? He said, total confusion.
But Bob Schieffer, thanks, Rita. We talked earlier this morning that one job of a defense attorney, and in effect, Senator Hatch was the defense attorney, it was to cast doubt on the principal accuser. That's a standard courtroom technique. And while everybody keeps saying this isn't a trial, it is a trial in a way, and Hatch was, by anybody's measurement, very effective at doing that. Now, another thing that the defense attorney tries to do is send out a signal. Anybody who walks in here and tries to help the accuser or make new accusations had better have their helmet strapped on because I'm going to come at them. And from what Rita says, the woman Angela Wright, who talked about possibly testifying, may be going through that right now.
Well, I think if she does not testify, that seems to me that could be fairly significant, and it could do nothing but help Judge Thomas, because if that happens, that means you're going to have only one person of all the people who have worked with and for Judge Thomas over the years, only one person who has come forward to say he did these terrible things that Professor Hill says that he has done. It seems to me also that it's going to be very important what these people who come in to back up Professor Hill's story have to say. Because up until now, it's fair to say this is sort of an unsubstantiated allegation. The woman has made the charges. There's no reason to say that she's not telling the truth. But on the other hand, as yet, no one's come forward to say that, indeed, that she is telling the truth, or that, you know, they can back up that she's told the truth. So if we now have the second accuser not...
...was today and what his basic themes were in this short soundbite from what he said this morning.
I was harmed by this process, which accommodated these attacks on me. If someone wanted to block me from the Supreme Court of the United States because of my views on the Constitution, that's fine. If someone wanted to block me because they felt I wasn't qualified, that's fine. If someone wanted to block me because they don't like the composition of the court, that's fine. But to destroy me, Senator, I would have preferred an assassin's bullet to this kind of living hell that they have put me and my family through.
Clarence Thomas on the offensive, on the attack, as he has been from the beginning, to damn the process and damn the story. He says it's an outright lie that Anita Hill has told. Joining us from Washington is Republican Senator Arlen Specter of Pennsylvania. Senator Specter led the examination of Anita Hill yesterday. Senator, thank you for being with us. I want to read you a direct quote from the Washington Post this morning. These things are always a little uncomfortable, but the Washington Post says that in your questioning of Anita Hill, you were, quote, merciless, snide, and supercilious. That's from Tom Shale's column today. I want to give you a chance to respond to that. You had a job to do. Is that the way you did it?
I'll let the record speak for itself. I don't have any comment about that. The evidence is very conclusive that Professor Hill yesterday testified on a very key factor in denying that a Senate staffer said if she came forward that they might get Judge Thomas to withdraw. And later in the day, she totally changed that testimony in a way that I think was extremely critical as to her credibility. People are taking sides on this, Dan, one way or the other, all across the country. And the problem of sexual harassment of women is an enormously problemsome matter, one that I've worked on trying to get the Civil Rights Bill passed. But in this matter, we have to make an evaluation as to whether Judge Thomas did the things that Professor Hill said. And that's a tough job, and I think you have to ask very pointed questions to try to find out who's telling the truth.
Senator, is it your judgment, your best judgment now, set aside the question of how you're going to vote, I'm going to ask you how you're going to vote, that Clarence Thomas's nomination is in a stronger position than it was, say, 2 days ago?
Dan, I think it's all very much up in the air. I don't agree with any talk about momentum. I think that the only fair way to look at it is to wait until all the evidence is in. You've had some very strong charges by Professor Hill. You've had a strong denial by Judge Thomas. And now I think we have to go through the hard analysis of the specifics. And when I question Judge Thomas this afternoon, I intend to go into some very strong details as to what Professor Hill has said. And then we'll see whether the Washington Post columnist was right or wrong.
Senator, we mentioned on the air yesterday, I mentioned on the air that you're a very experienced prosecutor, spent a long time as a prosecutor, said that you were the most experienced man around with cross-examination. If you were a prosecutor in this case, you have two people tell different stories. It's clear that one or the other is lying. Yes, it's always possible that they're both lying. But why not just send out investigators to nail down the facts as you would have done when you were a prosecutor? Why not just say, okay, we're going to wait a few days. I think you found 2 or 3 fairly good detectives from Philadelphia, any place else. They'd find out the facts pretty quickly.
Well, Dan, let me start with the point that I'm not a prosecutor. I don't represent anybody except the people of Pennsylvania. I don't think this is an adversary proceeding, and I'm not trying to do a job for Judge Thomas or a job against Professor Hill. I'm trying to find out the facts. And this has all come about us very suddenly. And when you say send out investigators to find out what's happened, we're charged with coming back to the Senate on Tuesday with an answer. And what I'm trying hard to do within a very limited time frame is to find within the testimony itself some indicators. And I think that Professor Hill's testimony yesterday provides those indicators. Her total change of testimony on the USA Today story, her very strained testimony on saying she did not have a job to stay at the Education Department, which was flat out false, her testimony about not keeping records of these horrendous statements in a context where she says she feared that Judge Thomas might fire her, but she kept records of many lesser things. This is an internal examination of what the witnesses said, and within a very limited time frame, what we're trying to do is to see what really happened.
Senator Specter, thank you very much. The hearing is resuming. We'll let you slide back into your seat.
Okay.
Thanks for helping us. Talk to you along the way.
Okay.
Thanks a lot.
What we'll do is we'll go for roughly 40, 45 minutes with asking questions on this side, and then yield back to our friend from Utah, and then maybe start to wind this down, hopefully. And as pointed out by the ranking member, other senators may have questions as well. Judge Thomas, yesterday and today, we heard about the obviously sharp and stark contrast between Professor Hill's testimony and yours. And you've indicated that you have no desire or willingness, and I've agreed that to go into other aspects than those that have been alleged in your personal life. We have a witness before us, had a witness before us, who is a tenured professor at a law school, whom you say that you viewed exactly how the committee viewed her prior to her coming forward, and I suspect many subsequent to her coming forward, as a credible person. We have two very credible people with very, very diverse positions on an issue that if we could ever find a way, and I know of no way, that no one in the whole world that I'm aware of, at least involved in this process, finds enjoyable. And rather than ask you to go through her allegations, which you have categorically denied, and my colleagues, Senator Hatch and Heflin and Leahy, have already questioned you about, what I thought I'd try to do is try to find out where there is agreement in the testimony, not disagreement, to determine whether or not there is any place from which we can logically start to begin to make the cut on who's telling the truth. Obviously, someone's not. And again, I go back to the point that you've made time and again, and admirably, that you had not second-guessed the professor's credibility until now. It came as a shock to you, as you stated. So, if you are willing, I'd like to decide where there's agreement between the testimony given by you and given by her. You testified that Professor Hill was your, quote, attorney advisor at the Education Department. Is that correct?
That's right, Senator.
How many such attorney advisors did you have?
Senator, there was one other more senior professional on my staff, but she was not an attorney at the time. She was going to law school, in fact, and on whom I relied for some policy as well as some management work. She would have been the only other professional on my personal staff.
Your personal staff. So on your personal staff, there were only two people at the Department of Education.
That's right.
Professor Hill and this other person.
That's right.
Who was going to law school at the time.
And for two professionals, there was also a secretary.
And then and a secretary.
That's right, Diane Holt.
Yes. Now, as a result, I take it was not uncommon for you to talk one-on-one with Professor Hill while at the Department of Education.
That's true. That was also true with the other person.
And with regard to both these persons, I assume conversations with either or both would take place fairly frequently if they were your two. Or let me not assume anything. Would they take place fairly frequently? Would you see them more than once a day, for example, in the conduct of your affairs at the Department of Education?
It would not be uncommon, but I would not assign a number to it. It may be that some days I may see them none, and other days I might see them once.
Well, up here, for example, as you know from working in Senator Danforth's staff, the chief of staff, the head of the committee, the person in charge of the legislative operation, those people, generally speaking, have immediate access to Senator Danforth, Thurman, Biden. I mean, that's kind of how it works up here. And I don't want to confuse how it works here with how it worked there. I assume that if Professor Hill wanted to see you, she would have essentially the same kind of access you observed the chief of staff would have here on the Hill to the office in which you work.
No, that's not an accurate comparison.
Well, then I'd like to hear what
the deputy assistant secretary would have that kind of access.
The deputy assistant secretary would have that access to you. I see. Would you describe the type of access that Professor Hill and her professional responsibilities at education had to you?
I think it was my secretary normally made those kinds of judgments. If I were available, if I were not busy, if I was not in the middle of something and the matter merited it, she certainly didn't have to make an appointment.
Now, this other person who worked in the capacity similar to Professor Hill's, as you described it, what was his name or her name?
It was her name. Her name was Tricia Healy.
Healy, H-E-A-L-E-Y?
I think so. But she perhaps had more access because I believe, and that's been 10 years ago, we met at the beginning and at the end of the day routinely. She is the person who followed the list of assignments that I had within the organization, people who needed to be involved in certain projects, people with whom I needed to touch base, projects that were finished and unfinished, evaluations that needed to be done, those kinds of things.
Now, either at the Department of Education or at EEOC, when Professor Hill would have access to you, to be speaking to you, either at her initiative or your initiative in the performance of your duties, was it unusual for those conversations or exchanges to take place alone, just with the two of you?
It wasn't unusual, just as it wasn't unusual for Tricia Healy. Right. But normally, I have basically an open door, and my secretary, Diane, would guard that door, basically.
So that, like the conduct of any business, usually when not all decisions or all judgments that are brought to you by staff require you calling in all the staff. A lot of those decisions are made as they are here, one-on-one.
No, I think that's going too far. I made those kinds of decisions one-on-one, generally with the deputy assistant secretary. There were any number of problems that we had within the agency, and I believe that when I made those kinds of decisions, it would have been with him. I would have spent a significant amount of time with Tricia Healy, I think, with going through the assignments, and that would be one-on-one, but it would usually be more of going through a list of things to get done.
Now, in your discussions, conversations, meetings with Professor Hill, you have indicated to the committee, and I don't want to put words in her mouth either, but I got the impression, I don't have the record, but I got the impression that you've stated you viewed her as you're being in the role of a mentor, like you have with all people who've been on your personal staff. Is that a correct?
I looked out for the members of my personal staff. I made sure that I tried to be aware of their careers and aware of their progress, et cetera, not just a mere employer-employee relationship. Again, that was true in the case of my other assistant, who was, I believe at that time, either finishing night law school and or studying for the bar exam. And there was simply an effort to make some accommodation. I thought it was a good idea, and she was doing very well.
Now, were there ever occasions, again, in attempting to find out where there's agreement, were there ever occasions that you would have an opportunity or occasion to be speaking with Professor Hill in either capacity, EEOC or as her boss at education, where you would discuss matters either as her mentor in that general category, looking out for her interest, or in any other capacity, that where you would discuss matters other than business matters?
I think that there may be occasions when we would debate politics, as I indicated. She was from Yale Law School, and of course I was interested in what had happened to the law school. There were some people, I think, who'd clerked on the Supreme Court who'd been in her class, that sort of thing, similar to what I do with my clerks. They have their own friends, they have their ideas about the world, and occasionally they will chat with me about those, or if they have problems. I think Anita Hill had some health problems from time to time. I can't remember exactly what they were. I believe either back or allergies or something like that. It would be those sorts of things.
Professor Hill testified that sometimes that you sometimes discussed how your son was doing, for example, with her, how your son was doing.
No, I don't remember that. I brought my son to the office quite a bit. He was a young kid then. My wife and I were separated, and he would be in the office. And
I'm not going anywhere in terms of your son. I'm just trying to get a sense of the flavor of the conversation.
And I'm trying to tell you, I don't remember that. I discussed my son, perhaps, and the problems that I was having from a financial standpoint. I may have mentioned it to my secretary, but I don't remember mentioning that to Professor Hill. And what I'm suggesting to you now is that my son, because he was living with his mother, came to the office fairly frequently and was around.
I understand that. When we were having as a mild digression, we were having the full committee meeting over here. There was a knock on the door. We asked not to be disturbed, and in walked my 10-year-old daughter. So I understand about children being at work.
Raise the IQ of the whole meeting.
How can I disagree with that? Now, Judge, you testified that you never asked out Professor Hill on a date, ever.
That's right.
Is that correct? Now, as I'm sure, if you don't know, I'm sure was pointed out to you, and we all know that everything that's reported isn't true, not because it's intentionally meant to mislead, but sometimes there is a miscommunication. It was reported in the New York Times on the 7th of October on page A13 that Judge Thomas told the investigators, meaning the paper's investigators, that he had asked the woman out a few times, and after she declined, eventually dropped all advances. I assume that is a misunderstanding. Someone rapidly writing back there to tell me without my glasses I've misread it? What's it say? FBI investigator. I don't have my glasses. What's it say?
You borrow mine?
Yeah. Thank you. He's only twice my age, too.
But younger otherwise.
That's exactly right. It says, Senator Biden said in a statement today the allegations were investigated by the Federal Bureau of Investigation at the request of the Judiciary Committee, period. Judge Thomas, this did not come from Senator Biden, Judge Thomas told the Bureau's investigators that he had asked the woman out a few times, and after she declined, eventually dropped all advances. That is incorrect.
That is wrong.
Wrong.
I had the occasion to be re-investigated by the FBI agents prior to this hearing.
Thank you.
In fact, I believe it would have been on Thursday afternoon. And the FBI agent in my living room stated that it was wrong. The very same FBI agents who interviewed me and indicated that he was distressed that this matter had been reported that way. At no time did I ever indicate that I ever asked her out. I categorically denied that I ever asked her on a date.
That's why I asked you the question, Judge, to make sure on the record what you said. I thought that's what you had said, but it's been sitting out there. Let me return to your discussions, if any, with Professor Hill that may have been of a non-work nature.
Pardon me?
That may have been, as you've indicated, there were some discussions you've had with her about Yale Law School, about discussions or conversations or exchanges at work that did not relate to what was going on at work, which would be almost impossible for anyone in the whole world to not have in a business setting. Somebody, you don't every time. We don't. Thank you. We don't. You don't, as you've testified. I want to make it clear. Always and only talk to your staff about precisely what the business is. So you've indicated that you have had some discussions with her about Yale Law School, how it was going, how it's changed.
Mutual friends, particularly Gil Hardy. It may have been current events, those sorts of things. The things I talk with my clerks about are the other members of my staff.
Did you ever inquire about, or did she ever volunteer, to the best of your recollection, anything about her social life? I can't stay late tonight. I've got a date. Yeah, that fellow you mentioned at the Supreme Court from Yale, I'm dating him, or anything. Was there any discussion ever that you recall about her social life?
Someone she may have said, I've got to leave tonight because I'm going out to dinner. I can't recall a specific, nor would there'd be any reason for me. It would be simply a reason for her not being at work. There may have been an indication of what she was doing. There'd be no extensive discussion about that. I don't see any reason why that would happen. I mean, today what my clerks would simply do is I'm having dinner with a couple of friends of mine from law school. The only thing that I can remember, and this is very general, was that I believe, and I could be misrecalling this, was that she had dated someone in Oklahoma who came to New England or something, and they weren't together or something like that. That's really vague.
No, that's what, I mean, it's kind of hard to remember for anybody to remember anything of passing topic, because it's a while ago. You emphasized here today, earlier, this is again, we're all trying to find out what it could be, what could be a motivation if in fact what you say is true and what she says is not true. How this happened. You indicated that today that a deceased friend of yours who was your Holy Cross classmate, law school classmate, summer roommate had referred, and is now deceased as I understand it.
That's right.
Had referred Anita Hill to you. And I do not have the transcript from this morning, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but that you said you viewed you had a special obligation as a consequence of his referral. Now, did that special obligation result in any additional, now make it clear now, okay? For the moment, I'm not talking about the allegations. I'm trying to figure the relationship. Did that special relationship that you, obligation, wrong word, a special obligation, did that impact on your relationship, professional or otherwise, with Anita Hill in a way any differently than it has with any other person who has worked for you? Did you feel a special obligation to look out for her? She was a young woman, and say, now look, you know, be careful what you do in this city. Certain parts of the city are dangerous, or, you know, you gotta, you know, or be careful who you date, or make sure you call your mother, or have you called, was his name Gil?
Yeah.
Have you called Gil to, you know, he's concerned about you? You want to keep in, or anything of that nature?
I don't recall anything of that nature, Senator. What I was referring to was to make sure that I looked out for her career, that she got solid work, to make sure that everything was okay at work, that she got her promotions, those kinds of things. The kind of relationship that you're talking about that in your examples, those are the kinds of things I look out for with young interns who work with me during the summer, or individuals who are in co-op programs, those individuals. I have had some who were 19, 20 years old that I would treat more like my own son or daughter.
So there would be no reason for anyone, including Professor Hill, to assume that you were asserting and or you were taking on a role, any other role than an employer who was concerned about the work product, as opposed to what all of us have when young interns are from our states are sent down here that may work for, we have unpaid interns in my office. And so a friend will say, can my son or daughter? And the first thing I say is, well, first of all, they can't come down unless I know where they're going to live. Is there a relative down here? I'm not taking responsibility for a 17-year-old kid to come to not just this city, any city, and so on. So we, all of us, I'm sure at one time or another, have called in young women or men who are in college in town, who are referred to us and work as interns, and said, well, you know, how you doing in school, and tell me what you're doing, and so on and so forth. There was no reason for Anita Hill, was there any reason for Anita Hill to think that there was that kind of relationship that you had, or concern that you had for her?
I can't think of a reason for her to think that. As I indicated, Senator, I had, Mr. Chairman, there are any number of younger kids who have worked for me that I would be concerned about. Individuals who are not from the city and who don't understand the city, individuals who occupy themselves after work with other kids their age, again, without the guidance. I would be concerned about them not knowing the rules of the city, but certainly not in her case.
Now, you said yesterday something that I don't dispute. I don't know, so I can't dispute it. That one of the members, and I forget who said it, that Professor Hill was a meek professional woman. She came across as a meek person, and you said, well, I call her anything but meek. Can you elaborate on that a little bit more today for me?
Well, the point that I was making, Senator, if you asked me to describe the Anita Hill who worked for me, meek would not be the word. She was very bright. She would argue for, particularly with the other special assistants, argue for her position, and if they're sometimes to a fault. And by that I simply mean that she would become entrenched in her own point of view and not understand the other point of view. And she was certainly capable of storming off and going to her office, and that happened on any number of occasions. So meek would not be the word. She was also a forceful debater on the issues that she was involved in.
Was there any change between the Anita Hill that first started to work for you at EEOC and the Anita Hill, I beg your pardon, at Education, and who eventually worked for you at EEOC, and just before she left, was it basically the same person, same modus operandi, same relationship relative to you professionally?
No, the relationship, as I indicated in my opening statement, Senator, Mr. Chairman, changed primarily because my job changed, and the staff went from those two professionals to maybe 10, 12, 15 professionals, with a chief of staff, office directors of 14, individuals, a chief of staff being in charge of my personal staff as opposed to the staff having direct access. So even the special assistants couldn't see me on an as-available basis. Gotcha. The chief of staff could see me on that basis, but she could not.
When you saw her, though, was it essentially the same professional woman in terms of her professionality? Did she seem more confident, less calm? Was there any difference in the Anita Hill, not necessarily in terms of access, but the professional lawyer, Anita Hill, who worked for Clarence Thomas? Was she the same woman in terms of when you were with her?
Senator, I can't. All I can say is this, that I can't tell you that there was a specific change. What I can say is that she was having more of a difficulty. I thought, from my perspective, she was having more difficulty in the role at EEOC because there were so many more staffers, and there was so many different levels of communications, for example, or responsibilities. For example, I would rely on individuals with more experience to work on projects that were of great significance to me. There were routine assignments that would be what I would call grunt work, much more than we had at Education. There was sort of a pecking order. And I don't think that she, in that role at EEOC, was very high on the pecking order because of experience.
Well, you said at your very first, almost your first utterance yesterday when you first appeared, that you can't imagine what you could have said that could have caused Anita Hill to say what she has said. But if there was anything she ever misunderstood, I'm paraphrasing, I don't know that's the exact quote, then you're sorry. Now let me ask you this. On its face, that seems to me to be a completely reasonable statement for one to make. I don't think it, speak for myself, things that I might say, jokes that I might tell with a male trusted aide that I've been with for 20 years might not be the same joke that I'd be willing to tell with the female members of my staff. And I suspect that were I a woman, there are certain things that I could say to the females on my staff that I couldn't say to the males on my staff. Now, in groping to trying to figure out how we got to where we are in terms of this discrepancy, among the men on your staff, did you ever kid about, make reference to, say you saw, deal with any of the subjects that Anita Hill says you dealt with, spoke to, mentioned to her?
No. Let me go back a second. There are a couple of comments I'd like to make about that. I attempted to conduct myself in a way with my staff so that there were no jokes that I would listen to or tell to men that I could not listen to or tell to women. There were no jokes that I found acceptable that I could not listen to or tell to any ethnic group. The other thing, when I was speaking about on something I may have missed, I was talking about a kind of an insensitivity. Let me give you an example. And it doesn't mean mean-spirited. It's not in the area that we're talking about. A former member of your staff came to work for me in 1982, Barbara Paris.
One of the best people ever worked for me.
That's right. She's been one of the best who's ever worked with me and who is familiar with me.
She's made me aware of just how familiar she is.
That's right. She understands why I feel so strongly about being here. The Barbara Paris, my offices were on the 5th floor. The elevator panel of buttons was at a level that Barbara Paris could not reach because she's a short person. She did not tell me. I was insensitive to it because I could reach the panel. So someone had to inform me that she was climbing up 4 or 5 flights of stairs because she couldn't reach the panels. That it is that kind of insensitivity, oversight. And I made it a point to tell my staffers, if I do something, let me know what it is. If you see something, tell me what it is so we can correct it. If you hear something, tell me what it is. My grandfather used to have a statement, I can read your letter, but I can't read your mind. And the point is, let me know if I'm overlooking something. And I think that the totality, the other component of my statement was, if something happened, if I had known, I could have corrected it. That has been my attitude.
Yeah. I was just referring to your comment, I think you said, if anything I did or said.
Right.
That's what I was referring. I was referring to the said part.
Yeah.
Although you don't, I wasn't referring to telling ethnic jokes, but you know, there are. If you're sitting watching a football game, and you watch some 280-pound tackle blow away a 158-pound flanker back, you and I might describe that in a way, sitting with one another, both having played football, that we would not describe in the same way if there were 5 women sitting in the room. I may be wrong. Maybe you wouldn't.
Senator,
I
this may sound unusual to you, but I would describe it the same way.
Well, that's interesting. So there's no. So there's maybe that's because
Senator,
maybe that's because you were closer to the 280-pound lineman and I was closer to the 130-pound flanker back.
Senator, my attitude was in my work environment, my staff were almost invariably predominantly women.
Yeah.
The senior person on my staff was a woman. I could not tolerate individuals making that environment uncomfortable or hostile. I could not tolerate individuals who had to segregate their language or conduct in order to get along. The conduct had to be purged of offensive attitudes, and I made that a constant effort, and that's something that I was proud of, and it was something that I'm sure the people who worked with me felt comfortable with and understood.
In order to attempt to seek the truth here, I'm accepting, for the sake of this discussion, the assertions you have made that you never said anything in the workplace or out of the workplace to Miss Hill. Let's, as we lawyers say, stipulate to that for the moment.
Senator, you stipulated to my character earlier.
I did, and I have again. All right, now let me ask you this. I said it before this, and I want to ask you the question. We're trying to find out why we're here. An incredibly credible woman who thus far no one has impugned her character or her integrity sat before us and, at a minimum, impressed this committee on both sides. Now, we both know that our employees, or when we were employees, you form your opinions about the person with whom you work not merely and totally based upon that person in the working environment. For example, no matter how well your boss treats you and how fairly, if you knew from observation or you heard from outside that he did not treat his children well, you would not necessarily have a universally high regard for him. You treat your children well. I'm not making any innuendo. I'm trying to make the point. How can we help us figure out, if we can, why this very credible woman might, as you're asserting, be telling a lie?
Now, she's asserting that I did something. I'm not asserting anything about her.
Well, she's asserting you did something. You are denying you did what she asserted. We have two very credible people in front of us. Now, all I'm asking you is, if there is anything that would reasonably or unreasonably, remotely, in your view, potentially lead a person to form an opinion of you different than they had of you in the workplace because of anything outside of the workplace.
Senator, my relationship with my staff, although I care about them, is in the workplace.
I understand that, but opinions...
No, Senator, it's in the workplace. I did not make these statements or do these things. And I cannot get into or determine how she arrived at whatever it is that influenced her. I'm simply saying that I don't know what her motivation was. These things did not happen. I did not allege anything, or I did not say anything to her. I did not attempt to date her.
I understand that. Let me give you an example of what I'm thinking of, and maybe you can think of something that relates to this. If not, we'll drop the whole subject. I can think of specific employees with whom I've worked. Their working relationship with me and with everyone in my office has been one that's been exemplary. I have gone, I can think of specific incidents. I've gone to lunch with this person and several others. In this case, it was a man. And we ordered lunch, and the lunch was late. We're out of the work environment. And this person berated the waitress, at which time I said, "You don't work for me here. But you're not going to work for me anywhere if you treat people that way." I was out of the work environment. I, for the first time after about 5 or 6 years working with this person, never having seen that, watched this person just read up one side and down another a waitress because she brought the wrong meal. So my opinion was colored by something totally unrelated to the workplace about that person. Now, what I'm trying to figure out, and it's the last time I'll ask and we'll drop it, is there anything you can think of outside the workplace that Miss Hill, Professor Hill, would have heard of or witnessed that might shade her opinion of you that may never have happened in the workplace?
Senator, or Mr. Chairman, I attempt to conduct myself with my staff at lunch or walking down the street or whatever in a way that they could be or think or feel was admirable. I do not and did not commingle my personal life with my work life, nor did I commingle their personal life with the work life. I can think of nothing that would lead her to this.
Okay. I accept your statement. Let me ask you another question. Did you inform the FBI that you had on occasion driven, I assume the way you describe it, as a favor, Professor Hill home, or that you had on occasion, a single occasion or more than one, I'll let you describe it, gone in for a Coke or a beer after work? Did you tell the FBI that?
I think I did, Senator. Again, I can't, these events have unswirled very rapidly, but, and I don't think that was a particular issue. Their response was, or their questioning went to specific allegations.
I'm not suggesting if you didn't.
No, I'm just saying I don't remember, but I think I did.
Okay. Now, having asked you that, in the questions that have been asked by senators on this committee, I don't know whether it was Senator Hatch or whether it was Senator Leahy or both or Senator Specter, I can't recall who. I am confused about cars. Cars, automobiles. Now, I thought I heard you say you did not own an automobile when you were at the Department of Education. And I thought I heard you say you did not have a driver assigned to you when you were at the Department of Education. Is that right? Am I what are the facts? Did you own an automobile when you were at the Department of Education, and or did you have a driver assigned to you, an automobile available to you through the government when you were at the Department of Education?
At the Department of Education, I owned a car,
So you would drive to work?
No, some days I lived in Southwest, and the Department of Education is in Southwest, the Switzer building, and I would walk to work some days. Other days I would drive, depending on what I needed the car for. My point was that I would work late often, and if it was late or if for some reason she may have needed a ride, I would give her a ride, or if I were headed that direction or if I were leaving.
So you'd drive her in your own automobile is the point?
Yeah, but it wasn't, I don't remember any large number of times, but it has happened.
Yeah. Can you give us any sense of how often it happened that you would go in and have a Coke or a beer after?
Oh, it couldn't have happened any more than maybe twice, 3 times. Nothing, it was nothing major. It was just a matter of, we may have been arguing about something, debating something, a policy or something.
What are the kind of things you'd argue about?
I think we debated affirmative action. We debated busing, those sorts of things, black colleges.
Now, you said she had a roommate. Did you ever meet her roommate when you went?
Yes, to my knowledge, the only times I've ever seen her, she was as I remember, a basketball player. I think she was